On quiet mornings, light would pass through crystal halls and turn the air into soft colors. The spires would hum with the breeze from the silver sea, and children would chase each other across floating courtyards. Princess Sareth had grown up with that song in her ears. She had learned the careful steps of court and the graceful speech of her people. The Alari, who believed war was a sad old story told by others. Alaris prized harmony and beauty. Alira stayed out of trouble. Now, the palace did not sing. It cracked. The spires were broken at the tips like snapped glass reeds. The floor had scars from heat beams. Smoke drifted through the open arches like tired ghosts. In the once bright throne hall, the light was dim and unsteady, bending over colonnades that had lost their shine. The Varkle had come 2 weeks ago. They were brutal and sure of themselves, armored from head to heel, with ships that did not glow, but devoured light around them. They were a species that loved conquest and respected only force. They had taken the outposts first, then the sky, then the lands around the capital. They could not be talked down. They did not want a treaty. They wanted Alaris, and they were used to getting what they wanted. Sareth stood beside a cracked pillar and placed a trembling hand on the old transmitter. It sat in a quiet chamber below the throne hall. The machine was a relic, still heavy with the dust of generations. The Alari had kept it mostly out of tradition. Some said it was a shrine. Others said it was useless. Once Sareth had believed the latter, now she needed it. "The signal is aligned," said Vizier Leto, his voice thin with fear. He had lost his crest jewel in the last bombing. His silver-white robes were black at the hem. "Your Highness, if we send this, we call strangers into our sky. We do not know who will answer." "We know who will not answer," Sareth said. "The Dominion's main fleet is weeks away. Our neighbors hide behind polite words. The Varkle, do not wait, Leto." She placed both hands on the transmitter. The metal was cold. "I will call," she breathed in. She spoke in the old tongue. "Heir to Alaris. Beacon of the first spire. Plea accepted by the cosmos." Her voice shook once, then steadied. The machine woke with a low hum. On the wall, a faint constellation map flickered to life, too archaic to show more than rough beacons. The signal went out on a frequency older than the Dominion itself, a relic band the modern arrays called primitive. It flew into the dark like a tiny spark. Sareth closed her eyes. She expected silence. The reply came in days. It did not come like the answers she knew. There was no gold seal. No melodious pre-preamble. The palace receivers pinged with a blunt, functional rhythm. A new voice filled the chamber, flat and clean. In a trade language that sounded almost hard. "This is the United Terran Expeditionary Command," the voice said. "We received your call for help." Sareth's eyes snapped open. Leto dropped his stylus. "United," Terran Sareth repeated. She had heard whispers of a world called Earth, a blue planet in a quiet part of the Orion Spur. The Alari knew very little. The maps called it unrated. Some said it was a death world, a place so harsh that life survived only by being sharp, stubborn, and hungry. Others said that was a cruel joke told by frontier traders. Sareth did not know. She only knew the voice sounded like stone. "We request clearance to approach and land," the voice said. "We are inbound with a small task force. Patch to your planetary defense net, if any remains." Leto pulled himself together and whispered, "Give them a corridor. If they are raiders, they will show their nature soon enough." Sareth nodded. "Terran Command," she said, trying to match the simple tone. "This is Princess Sareth of Alaris. You are cleared. Approach through Corridor Luma 7. Beware of our call patrols. We are grateful." Reply was short. "Copy Luma 7. We'll take care." Skies over the capital darkened. They did not darken with the wide, elegant silhouettes of Alari ships, or with the blocky, heavy triangles of the Dominion's war cruisers. They darkened with small, angular craft that seemed built less for grace than for surviving a storm. The Terran ships slipped out of fold space without ceremony. Their hulls were scarred. Their paint was matte and dull. Heat shields rippled as they cut into atmosphere. They flew not in precise figure eights, but in a tight, hungry stance. Like hawks over a field, Sareth watched from the palace balcony. The winds tugged her thin, ceremonial veil. The landing thrusters carved lines of dust into the cracked plaza. Hatches opened. Ramps slammed down. Figures came out in rows. Humans. They were taller than she expected and moved with a steady purpose. Their armor was not polished. It was dented, patched, and covered in marks that looked like stories. Their helmets had clear visors, revealing eyes that went everywhere at once. Some bore scars. Some carried gear that looked heavy enough to crush an Alari's brittle bones. They did not bow. They did not announce. They set up a perimeter and scanned the sky. A human took off his helmet and looked up at her. He had dark hair, a straight nose, and a face like a cliff. He lifted his hand in a crisp motion that was not Alari protocol, but felt like a promise. "Princess Sareth," he called, opening his transmitter with a flick of his wrist. His voice now came through the palace speakers, clear and steady. "I'm Captain Elias Ward, United Terran Expeditionary Command. We're here because you called." Sareth descended the steps to meet him. Up close, everything about him felt dense. Even his calm felt heavy. The humans smelled faintly of metal, oil, and something like smoke. Two of them carried crates as if they weighed nothing. Another knelt and pushed a hand into the black soil of the plaza, rubbing it between finger and thumb like an artist testing pigment. "You came so fast," Sareth said. "We were not sure anyone would hear us, much less reply. Your beacon used an old drift frequency," Ward said. "It's not elegant, but it goes far. We don't ignore calls."
Ow!
He looked past her at the broken arches. "We're going to harden this place. We'll need maps, air samples, any sensor logs you've got. With respect, Princess," he turned to his people. "Perimeter teams set choke points at the north and east arches. Engineers, I want field walls by nightfall. Logistics triage center in the west gallery. Move." They moved. The Alari had always moved like dancers, hands flowing to communicate, steps measured and graceful. The Terrans moved like water through a channel. They did not stop. They did not speak in long lines. They did not look up for praise. They lifted the broken benches in the gallery and lashed them together into barricades. They aimed small, spitting machines at the cracked tiles, and the cracks sealed. They ran cable in a harsh web from arch to arch and created a net that hummed like a sleeping beast. In the kitchens, they unpacked ration bricks and a tank that boiled water so fast it screamed. A human medic knelt beside an injured Alari and spoke in a low voice, telling simple jokes that made the child laugh even as he wrapped the wound. The Alari watched with careful eyes. They were a delicate species, tall and thin, their skin alive with shifting color. Sareth could read their feelings in the tint of their faces. Right now, many showed pale bands of fear. A few glowed with what might be offense. This was a palace, not a bunker. But most of all, Sareth saw something new, an ember of hope. As night fell, the difference between the species grew clearer. The Alari lit soft globes to keep the shadows kind. The humans kept the shadows and lit only what they needed. They used the dark like a cloak. They ate food from metal pouches that smelled sharp and heavy. An Alari servant tried to offer a plate of crystalline sweets. A human laughed, thanked her, and said, "Looks lovely." "Might kill me." He offered the servant a ration brick instead. The servant sniffed it and almost fell over. The human smiled and took a big bite. "Your people. Eat that." Sareth asked Ward, curious and a little alarmed. "We'll eat anything that doesn't run away fast enough," Ward said dryly. "Kidding, mostly it's high protein. Fuel for rough work." "You speak as if rough work is normal," Sareth said. "For us." It is later Sareth stood with Ward on the ruined balcony as the wind flicked ash from the broken spires. The stars beyond the smoke blinked like cold eyes. The Varkle would not wait. They had probed every night since the first attack. They would probe again. "You have a reputation," Sareth said softly. Ward glanced at her. "Do we?" the old traders whisper. "They call you Deathworlders." He considered this for a moment. Earth is not kind, he said. We learn to live by being tougher than the day. It is not a badge of pride. It's just what is. Deathworlders, Sarith repeated, as if tasting the word. It sounds terrible. Sounds true, Ward said, and looked back out at the dark. The Varkle came not long after the moon rose. At first there was silence, then a thin metallic buzz, like insects behind a wall. The humans moved as one. Alarms did not scream. Lights did not flash. Across the palace grounds, small lenses turned and focused. Ward raised his hand and made a short motion. The Alari guards, who were untrained for real battle, on themselves gently pushed behind human barricades. A shadow peeled itself from the outer court and became 24 armored forms. The Varkle were broad and heavy, with helmets that hid their faces and gauntlets made for crushing. They came forward with dark joy, confident that they would take this place as they had taken the ridge, the river, and the market district. The palace was a prize. They would carve their mark into its heart. The first Varkle hit the net stretched across the east arch and arced backward, armor sparking. The second ducked. The third found a gap and met a human tool that threw a line around his legs. He slammed to the tiles. The air filling the arch hissed with sudden mist. The human fog was not poison. It was only cold and thick, but the Varkle stumbled, surprised. Shadows stepped out of shadows. 4 humans appeared in the archway, standing firm. Sarith's breath caught. She watched from above, hands on the stone balustrade, too tight. The fight was short and terrible, but not messy. The humans did not scream. They did not howl. They did not fight like artists or poets. They fought like people who had done this before, who would do it again tomorrow and the day after, if life demanded it. They used the jagged floor as a friend. They let the Varkles wait, betray them. One human took a blow that would have broken an Alari in two and only staggered, teeth bare in a grimace, before slamming his shoulder into the attacker's chest and driving him backward into a pillar. Another dragged a wounded comrade by the straps of his armor, step by steady step, as the other 2 covered them. Sareth felt a surge of something she could not name. It was not fascination. It was not fear. It was a hard, hot knot of respect. By the time the Varkle realized their raid had gone wrong, it was too late. They broke and ran, hauling their injured. The humans did not chase far. Ward called them back at once. Positions, he said. We hold. He climbed the steps to the balcony to check on Sareth. His armor had a long gouge across one plate. A thin line of blood ran down his forearm. He did not seem to notice it. You saved my life, Sareth said. She had not planned to say it. The words came out anyway. Ward shrugged as if she had praised the weather. You called for help, he said. We answered. Why did your soldier drag his wounded friend out of the arch? She asked, thinking of that stubborn, slow pull. He risked his life. It was reckless. Ward looked at her, then at the arch, then back at her. Because he's ours, Ward said simply. We don't leave our own behind. Something clicked in Sareth's mind. A story she had heard a lifetime ago in a lush library with soft seats and gentle music, told by a teacher who wanted to frighten children into caution. A story about the Deathworlders, who would climb mountains with bleeding hands to catch each other, who would swim rivers full of teeth for a child, who would break their own bodies to carry someone else. She had dismissed it as drama. Now she wasn't so sure. Is that the heart of your people? She asked. This. Refusal to abandon? He considered the question. It's a piece, he said. We're a lot of pieces. Dawn was gray and heavy. The palace held. The Varkle patrols moved farther back, angry and uncertain. The humans built walls that did not look like walls, traps that were not traps, and doors that were barely doors. They strengthened weak lines without fuss. They used everything: broken benches, fallen spire fragments, shattered art. In the West Gallery, their medic worked until his hands shook. In the kitchens, a human laughed with an Alari cook about the taste of a spicy root. In the archives, a pair of humans and an Alari scholar unfurled old star charts and pointed together at lines that might be escape corridors if the worst came. Sareth walked among them, light on her feet and quiet, trying not to get in the way. They greeted her with short nods and small, sure smiles that made warmth creep to her face. She had always been a princess. She had never been someone others were happy to see in their work. It felt new and strange. Near noon, the air changed. Sareth felt it before anyone spoke. It felt like the moment before a storm, when the air holds its breath. "Captain," a human on the wall said. "Long range. Heavy fold signatures." Ward's jaw hardened. "How many?" "More than a probe. Less than a full armada. Big enough." Sareth looked at the sky. It was a pale white dome with a thin smear of violet. It looked peaceful for a heartbeat. Then the horizon rippled like water. Points of darkness slid free, grew, and became ships. They came in a slow rain, each one low and mean. The palace receiver chimed once and died. The Alari defense platform over the capital tried to speak and coughed smoke. The Varkal fleet settled into a hard ring around the city, their hulls black against day. "How long until they hit us?" Ward asked. "Minutes." Ward turned to Sareth. He took something from his sleeve. It was a small patch of cloth with a symbol she did not know, a round shape half covered by night. And at the bottom, a line of stars. He pressed it into her palm. It was warm from his skin. "If we fall," Ward said, quiet, like a man telling a friend where the spare key is hidden, "keep this. It means we came." Sareth wrapped her fingers around the patch. It felt too small for the weight she wanted it to carry. She looked at Ward. "Do not fall," she said, and the steady tone of her own voice surprised her. Ward's mouth twitched. "That's the plan." The first strike hit the outer quarter and turned stone into bright sand. The second hit the river wall and sent a boiling cloud of steam into the sky. Screams echoed through the market streets. The palace shook. A soft shower of crystal dust fell from the broken arches. The humans were already moving. "Shield the gallery. Get the families underground. Push the left wall. If they try the east again, make it a graveyard," Ward said. He lifted his rifle, checked it, and slung it with a smooth motion. "Princess, if you have to leave, I will not leave," Sareth said. He nodded once deeply in respect. And ran. The day became a storm of light and thunder. The Varkal pressed hard at the east arch, then at the north, then both at once. They did not care about the palace's older, gentler defenses. They smashed and crushed and burned. The humans gave ground only when they had to, and every step back folded into a new trap. They fought like people who knew the shape of fear and chose to stand with it. Sareth moved from station to station with the Alari medics. Face calm, even when her hands shook. She kept the black patch in her pocket, touching it when the walls rattled. She learned the human word incoming and the human gesture for down. She learned that human laughter sounded different during battle. It was sharper, but real. By late afternoon, the city beyond the palace was a scatter of fires and fallen towers. The silver sea had turned gray with ash, but the palace still stood. The humans still held. The Varkal pulled back, not in fear, but to gather for something larger. It came at dusk. The sky glowed sunset red, then stayed red, long after the sun had gone. It was not evening light. It was a fleet. Larger ships blotted out the high clouds, their bellies lined with weapons. The ground shook. The air tasted like a coin. Sareth stood again on the balcony, the wind now hot and strange. Ward climbed the steps to her side. He had a new cut on his cheek. His armor looked like it had been chewed. "They're bringing in the big one," he said. "They want to finish this." "Can you stop them?" Sareth asked, and hated the naked fear in her voice. "We'll try," Ward said. He looked at her for a long heartbeat, as if he wanted to say something else. Then he reached up and tightened the strap under his chin. "Stay low. If they breach, you run to the west gallery. There's a route out through the undercourt. Our engineers cut it this morning. My place is here," Sareth said. "I know," he said softly. "But the idea of Alaris needs to live, even if the stones don't." The light rose and spread. The Varkal flagship moved into position above the canyon that cut the city in two. Its mass pulled at the smoke. It opened like a terrible flower. Weapons aligned. Sareth felt a cold calm settle in her bones. Deathworlders, she thought. A cruel name for a people who had come so far so fast. A true name, maybe. True because they were built to stand where others fell? She tucked the Terran patch against her heart. Far below, human lines steadied, a narrow strip of shadow against the red storm. Ward lifted his hand. His voice cut through the channel, even and firm. Hold. Sky fell. He read light from the Varkal flagship covered the city like a wound. The air shimmered with heat. Every tower of Alaris Prime looked ready to fall. Smoke rose from the riverside. The ground shook again and again as explosions tore the lower streets apart. Princess Sareth stood on the palace balcony. Her hands still tight around the small Terran patch captain Elias Ward had given her. The cloth was rough and simple, but it felt alive, as if it carried the heartbeat of the humans below. The patch reminded her that hope could be small and strong at the same time. Below her, the Deathworlders moved like living iron. They didn't run. They didn't cry. They shouted quick orders and dragged wounded soldiers back to safety. The humans fought like the storm itself, loud, fast, and fearless. The line holds the first wave of the Varkal came with fire. Dropships hit the plaza, breaking stone tiles into dust. Warriors poured out, their armor gleaming black-red under the sky. The humans waited until the last possible moment. Then the air erupted, mines flashed. Hidden guns came alive. The humans had built their defense overnight, ugly, practical, and deadly. The Varkals stumbled into traps they didn't see. Sareth watched from the wall as Captain Ward stood in the open, rifle in hand calling orders through smoke. His armor was cracked, his voice steady. Every time a human fell, another took their place. Every time the Varkal charged, they hit the same invisible wall of human defiance. Leto, the old vizier, stood beside Sareth, trembling. "They cannot win," he whispered. "There are too many of the enemy." Sareth's eyes stayed on the battlefield. "Maybe they do not fight to win," she said softly. "Maybe they fight so others can." The humans began to fall back, not in panic but in rhythm. For every 10 steps backward, they turned and struck like hammers. They used the ground itself as a weapon, detonating the lower streets, collapsing walls to trap invaders. The Alari palaces became fortresses under Terran hands. Ward's voice came through every communicator. "Hold the line. Make them pay for every stone." The canyons of fire when the second wave came. It wasn't soldiers. It was ships. Dozens of gunships descended, hovering above the palace and the surrounding canyon. Their beams carved the air. The humans did not meet them head-on. Instead, they vanished into the canyons that cut deep under the capital, a maze of stone and fire. The Varkal followed, thinking they were chasing a retreating enemy. It was a trap. The canyons were old volcanic scars, filled with thick air and poisonous mist. No Alari had ever walked there for long, but the humans did not care. Their armor hissed and cooled itself. They kept moving. Their eyes glowed faintly behind glass visors. Sareth and a small Ilari unit followed from above, watching through binoculars. She saw the Varkos stumble and cough as their armor began to corrode. The canyon's heat peeled the shine from their weapons. The humans were built for this, for a world of danger, pain, and endurance. They fought not just the enemy, but the world itself. It still kept going. Sareth whispered, "They breathe death and call it air." Below, Ward's voice crackled in the radio. "Set the charges. Once they're in deep, we close the door." The Terran engineers had planted bombs through the canyon walls. When the last Varkal squad reached the choke point, Ward gave a simple order. "Light it," the world roared. Stone and fire crashed together. The Varkal army disappeared in a cloud of dust and molten rock. The blast rolled across the horizon, shaking the palace to its bones. Sareth stumbled, falling against a wall. When she looked up again, the sky had gone dark with smoke. The canyon was no longer a place. It was a grave. Aftermath and resolvers passed. Silence fell over the capital for the first time in days. Sareth went down to the lower city. stepping carefully between rubble and twisted metal. Humans were already digging survivors out, their hands blistered but steady. Ward was there too, limping, his face streaked with dirt and blood. "You live," Sirith said, relief breaking her voice. "Mostly," Ward said, smiling faintly. "You. I live because of you," she said. "Because of all of you." Ward leaned against a broken wall. Around him, Terrans were already repairing defenses, not celebrating. "We bought time," he said, "not peace." "What will you do now?" she asked. "Hold," he said. "Until there's nothing left to hold?" She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he couldn't stand against the whole fleet. But the look in his eyes stopped her. It was not pride. It was duty, something deeper than fear or hope. The final assault, the Varkal flagship, began to descend. Its shadow swallowed the sky. Its cannons glowed white. Ward gathered his remaining soldiers in the central courtyard. There were maybe 50 left. Every one of them was wounded, bandaged, or exhausted. None of them stepped back. "We've got one play left," Ward said, pointing to the sky. "They're coming to finish it. But they're greedy. They'll come low." He turned to his engineer, a woman with grease smeared on her face. "How's the core charge?" "Stable," she said. "We set it deep under the canyon ridge. If we trigger it, it'll take them all, and maybe us too." Ward nodded once. "Then that's how it'll be," Sarith overheard from the stairway. "You plan to destroy yourselves," she said, stepping forward. Ward met her eyes. "We plan to end this. There must be another way." He shook his head. "There's always another way, Princess, but not always enough time to reach it." He handed her a data crystal. "These are our come frequencies, our history, our maps. If we don't make it, tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them who we were." "I will," Sarith said quietly. "But you will tell them yourself." Ward smiled at that, tired and warm. "That's the spirit." The sacrifice, the Varkal fleet descended like thunder. Their leader, a massive warlord in black armor, stood on the bridge of the flagship, laughing as his cannons warmed below. The humans stood among the ruins. No banners. No fanfare. Only defiance. Ward raised his weapon. "For Alaris. For Earth. For everyone who stands when they should fall." The humans shouted as one. The sound was small against the roar of the sky, but it was fierce alive. The flagship fired, and the canyon below it exploded. The Terran. Fusion charge ripped upward through rock and air. The ground split like glass. A wave of fire rose, swallowing everything in its path. The flagship's shields collapsed, its engines melting into bright shards. The sky turned white. Sarith threw herself to the floor as the blast reached the palace. The air vanished for a second, replaced by silence and light. Then came the shockwave, tearing banners and walls. When the noise faded, the world was still. The morning after, it took 3 days before anyone dared climb from the ruins. Sarith was among the first. The capital was ash and shadow. The sea was black. The spires were gone. But the air was quiet, no more guns, no more screams. The Varkal fleet was gone too, their ships broken and drifting like burned leaves. Among the debris, the Alari search teams found survivors, humans, half buried, still alive. Ward was one of them. He had burns along his arm, his armor melted at the seams. But when they pulled him free, he was smiling faintly. "You're hard to kill," Sarith said. Kneeling beside him, "We practice," he said weakly. "Did we win?" She looked at the horizon. "You did," Ward chuckled. "Then that's good enough." Sarith took his hand, holding it gently. "Rest now, Deathworlder. Alaris remembers." He nodded, his eyes closing, but not in death, in peace. Years later, the Assembly of Worlds, the galaxy changed after Ellery's prime. News of the Deathworlders spread faster than light. At first, the stories sounded like myths, creatures from a lethal planet who fought gods and storms alike. But then came the proof. Transmissions, survivor logs. Sarith's testimony, in the grand hall of the Galactic Assembly, Princess Sareth stood before hundreds of delegates. Her gown shimmered in gold and blue, but her hands still bore the faint scars of that terrible night. Behind her, the great banner of the Alari Dominion hung beside a smaller, darker flag, the symbol of Earth. "Honored Council," she began, her voice echoing through the hall. "You know what we lost on Alaris Prime? But I stand here to tell you what we found." She paused, looking at the Terran patch pinned to her chest. "We found a people from a small world, a world of storms and teeth and endless struggle. We called them Deathworlders. We thought the name meant terror. We were wrong. It means endurance. It means love that stands when everything else falls." Her voice grew stronger. "They came not for power, but because we called. They fought not for conquest, but for hope. They saved a world that was not their own, and in doing so, they changed ours forever." The hall was silent. Even the oldest races, who had seen empires rise and fall, listened with still hearts. Sareth lifted the patch high. "Remember them, honor them, and know this: if the darkness ever comes again, the Deathworlders will rise." The lights dimmed. On the central display, the final message from the Terran Expeditionary Command played. It's found in the wreckage of the flagship's Come Array.